All right, we're in it now. So remember newspapers? Well, none of our next guests work for those old-fashioned newspapers. One is still in print, but the other digital media outlets are covering Brooklyn and some of its specific neighborhoods more closely and carefully than anyone out there. But Tom Zoyston, let me introduce you to our panelists. Joining me are the publisher of the Brooklyn Reader, C. Zawadi Morris.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And we also have Colin Mixon, a first-timer here. He's a reporter for the Brooklyn paper. Thanks for coming in, Colin.
My pleasure.
And we want to welcome back Tim Thomas of the blog, The Q at Parkside.
Right on. Thanks for having me.
So maybe we'll start with you, Tim. You've got some breaking news. So CB9, 2 items of breaking news. Number one, there's a long-time power broker, Community Board 9, ousted.
Well, yes, they did. And I'm a member of the, full disclosure, I'm a member of the board as well. So I sat in on the executive session. Pearl Miles has rubbed a lot of people the wrong way over the years, but she's always managed to get the job done.
The years, like decades.
Yeah,
like
about 30 years, and
for...
she was there for a long time with longtime community board chair Jake Goldstein. A couple years ago, there was a big shakeup, and 18 new members came on, and as you know, there were new elected officials, and they have the opportunity to put people on the board. So this was pretty much in motion a couple years ago, and we got wind of it. But then this came down just within the last month. Yeah. The actual dismissal papers, the allegations of wrongdoing. Pearl had a chance in the executive session to, in a heartfelt reply to the letter to address the issues and to talk about her years of service. But the board voted, 30 to 7 and 32 to 7, I think, to have her removed. So you're right, long-time presence.
But she was in that seat or on the board and for like 30 years now, but most people hadn't maybe heard the name broadly until like a year ago. The like shut up that was heard around the world at a really contentious meeting.
Well, I'm gonna come to her defense on that for a second. If you take something out of context, as we all know, it can seem uglier than it was. She yelled "shut up" after being harassed and screamed at for about 45 minutes. I was at that meeting. And I think everybody has a breaking point. And we saw Pearl's breaking point. But that was one of the allegations, also issues of primarily personality. People didn't like her. And that sometimes can be a reason for a dismissal. She's also, this is also breaking news, she has filed suit. She will be claiming, claiming discrimination. She's, I believe, 66 years old, which is a protected class. And she also will claim that this was politically motivated. So we'll see how that plays out. It'll be very interesting.
Community board, what isn't politically motivated? It's all politics, right?
It's all politics.
That's the point.
Yeah, it's all politics. I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And the other story, really briefly, is that there's going to be a great big new building at the corner of Caton and Flatbush.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, and you covered that. I just saw that. What's very interesting about that is all this talk about anti-development and anti.
That's a big reason for her ouster.
It is, but this is a community board just south, and I think it's just a reminder that while all of us are talking and arguing,
they're making deals.
Developers are going straight ahead, and some of it is affordable housing. It really is, and in this building, it's 100% affordable. 3 different income tiers. So it's interesting. If we may see more of these projects go ahead, even as we're talking about it.
So what have you heard about the development? It's to be affordable housing too over there on Caton?
Yes, it's a lot of affordable housing that's going up. I believe it's something over 20 floors, so it's a large chunk of real estate. There. Yes, right on the corner. It's the community's always divided about that sort of thing. I think overall people want to see development, and if the development is going to provide a place for people who are existing here already to live, I think they're pretty much in support of it. So, story just came out this morning, and we'll see what kind of feedback we get.
Well, you cover Central Brooklyn, and you're in BedStuy, and there's no strangers to development over on that side of the city.
Yeah, development is moving at rapid fire pace. Actually, The news now, I'm sure you've heard, is that the development race is moving over into East New York and Brownsville. BedStuy is almost pretty much tapped out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much tapped out. And then we have so much brownstone and townhome real estate that there's really not a whole lot of development that can happen beyond, the empty lots. And that's plentiful in Brownsville and East New York. So that's happening a lot there.
So I know one other thing that you guys have been working on is council member from BedStuy, the tall guy, Bob Cornegie, calling for more parents to really rally to get some gifted and talented programs.
Yes, last week he, along with some of his colleagues in the Black, Latino, and Asian caucus, held a press conference. Yeah. And they were calling on Black and Latino parents to request from their administrators at the schools for specifically pre-K through second grade to ask for gifted and talented testing, applications for testing. Because apparently since 2012, the number of enrolled programs in the communities of color has dropped from like 22% to 27%. Wow. So they're trying to get that back up, and they're saying I don't think a lot of parents understand that they have to actually request it. So he's calling on the Department of Ed to answer these requests, and he's calling on the parents to make the request. So, but the deadline is November 9th. So they have until November 9th to go to their school, call them up, and ask for these applications.
Right.
Yes.
All right, Colin, you're charged with covering the whole of Brooklyn, looking at things.
Not quite, but a large part of it, yeah.
A large part of it. Tell us about what's happening with some bus routes.
So the mayor and the governor have reached a settlement to fund the MTA's capital program. They came up with $26.1 billion between them. The MTA's capital plan calls for 26.8. So today, actually, there's a MTA board meeting, and they're going to figure out.
Find the rest of the cash.
Well, they like to call it efficiencies, is I think the term they use. Also, some program reductions. Yeah. So we should have more news on that today. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But now that most of the money is there, you're seeing lots of efforts to revive a number of cut services. Right. The B71 between Cobble Hill and Crown Heights being one of them. That was an effort that came out of the Park Slope Civic Council. Yeah. And it's picked up a lot of community support. They had actually planned on a lot more grassroots activity before approaching the elected officials. Yeah. But as soon as they caught wind of it,
they snatched it up. So it seems like a lot of electeds are sort of getting on the bus, trying to expand service.
Getting on the bus, as it were, yeah. And the train as well. Yeah. Mark Traeger, who covers Coney Island, Councilman Mark Traeger, he is interested in reviving express service on the F line. Coney Island is a neighborhood which has kind of seen a revival in the last few years, and it's seeing a lot more tourism and more family tourism. Yeah. And so, they're interested in bringing an express service to that neighborhood. He also would like to see a elevator installed at Neptune Avenue, which is another F train stop. It is in a Newark, which is a naturally occurring retirement community. Right. Comprised of the Warbass houses in Trump Village. During Hurricane Sandy,
they were hard hit. No elevators in there. People had to climb up to check on the old folks.
They rely, if they have to get around, they rely a lot on Access-a-Ride and buses. City buses are handicap accessible, but nevertheless, some people weren't able to get out in time. Yeah, and that's for a variety of reasons. There was a year or two before we had another hurricane that was, expected to be a lot worse than it was. And so, you kind of saw a lot of people not really expecting Sandy to be what it was. Yeah. But at the same time, they would like to see an elevator there to make sure people can get out.
So one thing that runs through this sort of all the Brooklyn reporting is this theme of development, whether it's like the new affordable housing coming on Caden or the rising rents for retailers. So what have we missed in the sort of larger media landscape where you guys have been plugging the gaps, talking about development and housing and keeping retail and mom and pops viable in Brooklyn?
Well, I would say that what I have come to see as something of a generational struggle. Certainly, we talk about race and we talk about income, but there's also longtime residents who feel that the neighborhood character is being destroyed, and some younger residents who are welcoming the amenities. So I think you see that there's more power, perhaps, in community groups in the older generation, which is more homeowners. Certainly people have a long-term stake in the neighborhood. And then the younger, which, last night I saw this really extraordinary bashing of bicyclists and even pedestrians.
So wait, this
Safety.
meeting lasted almost as long as the Mets game. You guys were down
we were in
there for
extra innings,
hours,
no
right?
question.
Yeah,
And
they can go on.
They can go on, and I think it's great. I think it's great that people are expressing themselves, but there is definitely a generational gap between
Like a real
those who
us
have
versus
cars,
them. Yeah.
those who park those cars, people who don't want to see any new people coming into the neighborhood, don't want higher density.
Yeah.
So the development issue certainly plays out in many of the ways that we're accustomed to talking about it.
Right.
But the generational divide is one that I really noticed, because in my neighborhood in particular, Lefferts Gardens and Crown Heights, there's always been a racial mix.
Yeah.
So it's not really a surprise to see, for instance, Caucasian faces coming off the train.
Right.
But what there is a lot of young people.
The youngsters.
And the younger people are more likely to ride bikes and
Right.
want bike lanes. Be more comfortable with the restaurants,
Yeah.
and they're paying higher prices, and they expect
Amenities
a
and all
safer,
that.
more amenity, walkable neighborhood, and they have different issues. So I'm seeing that emerge, and some of those younger voices may start to come on board at community boards and.
Well, like the
Activism.
borough president was trying to push for younger people to get involved in community boards, and it really is like, that entryway into improving your neighborhood without always knocking on the person's door, dialing 311, as to say, okay, this is a way into city municipal politics and just fixing streets. But do you think you see that push-pull in BedStuy and Central Brooklyn as well? Because it has been like a very staid, like you said, brownstone, traditional community, black, upwardly mobile, and working class folks. Is there a young-old tension happening now with gentrification?
I would say yes, but in BedStuy is very unique, I think, than its surrounding communities, and because of the fact that there were so many homeowners versus people renting. So the pushback, there's been more of a pushback, I think, in BedStuy, a little bit more than we've seen in the other neighborhoods, like Fort Greene, Clinton Hill, for example, or even Prospect Heights. There's been a real pushback in BedStuy. We had a huge wave to leave in the probably early 2000s, and then it kind of slowed after that. I think right now what people are most concerned about are the rising rents and how they're not only just going up, they're increasing without control. And there hasn't been any movement coming from the city government, even in the state as well, that addresses the fact that, landlords can raise their rents to just ridiculous rates at this point. The building that I moved in myself would have been considered 4 years ago quite expensive, and now that my husband and I are looking for a new place to move,
It's real expensive.
no, it's like we have to stay there because everything around us is even more expensive
up,
now.
yeah.
It's that I think people want controls.
Yeah.
They want to know that the government is looking out for them, that the city is looking out for them, and that hasn't been evidenced. It's like people from the outside are coming in, developing, and there hasn't been anything in place to kind of support the regular person. So I think that's our
Shaking your head over
primary
there.
concern.
Well, yeah. I mean, you see a lot of instances where people, businesses, renters will have a lease for a very long time. You see this especially with businesses who have several decade-long leases, and then, once that lease is up,
Boom.
they're out of business.
Yeah.
And then you have a Dwayne Reed or a CVS move in, and so, it's something that is changing the character of the city, which I think a lot of people are. Not
I know
happy to
you
see.
wrote the story about the theater over at the Circle there, the Pavilion.
Sure.
And that's becoming developed now. They're adding
Right.
housing there.
They're adding 5 stories worth of condominiums. It's an interesting process. They submitted a proposal to the Landmarking Commission in August, which was shot down. A lot of people. They made a big issue about the cornices.
Okay.
cornices.
Beautiful architectural feature.
It didn't fit with the character of Bartle Pritchard Square and the neighborhood.
Well, that's important.
And the fifth floor was a little too much, and so the community didn't get everything they wanted. But there seems to be a consensus that the architects and the developer listened to the community and kind of met everybody in the middle.
Okay, so in our final 2 minutes, so the underreported thing that you guys wish more people were paying attention to that you've been working on. Do you have anything to share? You just broke something today with the lawsuit. Do you have anything to add we should be watching?
Okay,
30
we talk
seconds,
about the negative stuff, okay?
Yeah.
The positive stuff I've never seen. In my neighborhood anyway, more people involved.
Okay.
Joining groups, starting groups, coming to the community board. There were maybe 200 people there last night.
Oh, that's
when
a
I
good
joined
start.
the board 5 years ago, you were lucky to see a handful of people outside of the board. So I think the good thing is that people are becoming engaged.
Okay, that's your thing.
That's my
Okay.
thing.
Your thing.
I have a couple of things.
We got
Can I talk really
time
fast?
for one.
Can I talk really fast?
Go.
Okay. Well, I think it's really great news that City Council Member Lori Combo, with some of her colleagues yesterday, Vanessa Gibson
Sex ed.
and Dan, introduced a trio of bills for the Department of Education to enhance, improve, and make a more comprehensive sexual education curriculum, to include LGBT issues, sexual and gender identification issues, mental health. Lori's bill specifically speaks to accountability and reporting, but I think it's a great step forward, and I applaud them.
That's grade 6 to 12, right, with the sex education
yes.
for the ramping up.
Yes.
All right, we're going to have to read yours in the paper because we're totally out of time.
Fair enough.
All
Sounds
right.
good.
Thank you all for joining us.
you.
We'll have to do it again.